Mr. Gibbs, to the interview. It's great to have you here. So a lot of people who are in middle school and junior high and maybe early high school have at least know your name or know your books. So you've written 5 best-selling series. You have Spy School, FunJungle, along with others. So you are a very well-known author. So it's awesome that we get to have you on.
Well, it is a pleasure to be here. I'm a big fan of what you two are doing here.
Thank you. So just to kind of break the ice, I was curious, who is your favorite author? Because you're the favorite author of a lot of kids, but who is yours?
I've, there are many favorite authors I have, and sort of at different points in my life. As a kid, I was a huge fan of Ellen Raskin and Donald J. Sobel and Roald Dahl. And then as I got older, I got into Carl Hiaasen and Douglas Adams and Michael Crichton. Michael Crichton certainly is, I mean, if you read my books, you can maybe see the most parallels between my books and his. That he was this guy who was writing, like showing me how to combine science and adventure. But Carl Hiaasen showed me that you could write a comic mystery with an environmental theme. So there's lots of people who I've just been a fan of my whole life.
Yeah, you and I share some similar authors. I love Douglas Adams and Michael Crichton. They're 2 of my favorite authors. They have phenomenal books.
Well, it's good to hear that you're reading them because
they are amazing.
Yeah, sadly, neither one of them is around anymore, but their work holds up.
Yeah, very unfortunately, but they have, like you said, amazing books. So I'm curious because a lot of authors do different things. Like, what is your writing process? When you get a book idea, then yeah.
Oh no, yeah. So you're first of all, you're absolutely right that authors do different things, and I don't. There's no right or wrong way to write a book. Lots of authors figure out what works for them, and sometimes they're even changing it up. So it took me a while to sort of get everything down. So when I get an idea, I actually start doing research, and that might be reading magazine articles. It might be tracking down scientists whose specialty that I want to talk to them about. It might be going to a zoo and touring behind the scenes. And then I start working on yellow pads, and I brainstorm out ideas. And the yellow pad process actually, can go on for a couple months as I'm just jotting down all these ideas. Eventually, I start to kind of work out an outline, and once I've got the outline pretty worked out, that's when I will finally go to the computer and start writing.
Yeah, that's interesting because we were reading your website and kind of looking at some of the things that you're well known for. And it's interesting. I've been looking at some of the classes other authors have taught, like James Patterson and some of the others about their writing process. And James Patterson seems to have a similar process because he said basically he does all of his research, then he starts writing it out by hand, then he goes back and types everything. That's really interesting. And yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that we a lot of times authors sort of joke about that. We break down into 2 categories, and there's the plotters and the pantsers. So the plotters are the ones who work all this stuff out, and the pantsers just fly by the seat of their pants and make it up as they go. And you can sort of blend things a little bit. I mean, even you plot the heck out of everything, you still want to leave yourself the ability to go like, oh wait, I have a great idea, and be open to inspiration. But if you do mysteries, it's really hard to not work it out ahead of time. I mean, because you want to know who the bad guy is. You want to know how they committed a crime and what the clues they left behind are and things like that. And I suppose it's possible to make that up as you go. But I of the people I know who work on mysteries, I don't think anybody just randomly flies by the seat of their pants.
Yeah, it's interesting. I am familiar with those terms because there's a program that tries to inspire young authors called Nanowrimo and other future adult authors. And they have different badges, quote unquote, or that's what they call them. Say, are you a pantser? Are you a plotter? And you can be a combination. It's really interesting. So I just somehow happen to be familiar with those terms.
Have you done Nanowrimo or any of those?
I have. Yeah. Maddie and I haven't completed one, but we are working. We are in the middle of working on one.
Well, I'm going to say that I do love the Nanowrimo program, but I think that there is some there's an emphasis on word count and getting the whole thing done as fast as possible. And I don't think anybody should feel like they didn't accomplish something if they didn't quite get it done in that amount of time, right? It is a hard thing to say, okay, write something in a month and write this many words or whatever. So that's not easy. Sometimes quality over quantity, I'd say.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because I was looking at kind of how they judge completion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, just as a random question, what is your normal book average word count? Because I've heard that it's different for different authors.
Yeah, it is. And to be completely honest, I didn't know what my word count was for the first couple of books. Nobody, my publisher did not tell me like write a book that's this many of words. They just said, write the book. And so I did. And so now I know that a book of mine is somewhere between 60 and 70,000 words. But that again, that's mine. And I do have kids reach out to me a lot saying, "Oh, I want to be a writer, but my books are too short." And I'm always like, "That doesn't matter. Nobody cares how long. That's not how you judge whether or not a book is good. A book should be as long as it takes to tell your story in the best way possible."
Yeah, that's really interesting. So we've had on other authors as I sent you our guest list,
Mhm.
and I've heard that authors do different things as they write. We had one author who said he dances because he has a standing desk as he writes. Other authors listen to music. So do you have any kind of quirky things that you do as you write, or you have kind of a habit of
I
writing?
am I am I'm a boring writer in that sense. I don't this is my office. It's pretty messy. You might be able to tell. There are people who procrastinate by cleaning to get out of writing, and I procrastinate by writing to get out of cleaning. But I rarely listen to music. I actually like it very, very quiet. And it's very hard for me to write anywhere except for my office. I'm not a coffee shop writer or anything like that. It's just writing. That's all I'm doing here.
So, like Taylor and I said, we're both kind of working on stories. And so, as I progress more into my story, I realize that I am taking things from different book series that I've read. So, how do you come up with original book ideas? Because I feel like everything out there has been done, but how do you get that like spark of inspiration for just a brand new original series?
Well, there's an argument that yeah, everything out there's been done in a certain sense, but it hasn't been done the way you're going to do it, right? So it is completely okay to get inspiration from other places, uh, and especially if you're combining ideas and saying I'm taking this from here and this from here. If you were going to write a book and say, oh, it's about dinosaurs coming back and they're using the DNA that they got out of mosquitoes and amber, like people be like, okay, they stole that from Jurassic Park. But could you write a book about dinosaurs coming back? Yeah, because it wouldn't be the same as Jurassic Park. Um, so there, I do. I do like to give the advice that people, because a lot of the time you're told write what you know, but if everybody just writes what they know, it's basically you're going to get a million books about kids being in middle school or high school or college, and because that's what we all did. But if you write what fascinates you, if you say, well, I'm going to do deep dives on whatever it is that you love. It could be some sort of sport. You could be a history buff and love World War II. You could, but if you start looking into these areas that fascinate you and getting there really are kind of a staggering number of worlds or specialties or something that people haven't written about, and so there's it's just finding those things and playing around with stuff, and I wouldn't get too wrapped up on saying like, okay, has anybody done it, because the fact of the matter is you might come up with something and be completely brilliant, and then you'll find out some obscure person did this a while ago, and you can't help it. At this point, there. I mean, it's very flattering. There's all these kids writing fan fiction, but I just announced like a new plot for Spy School at Sea, and some kids were like, "I thought of that already," and you're like, well, "Okay," like, um, there's I got to send my people somewhere. It's if I'm putting them on a cruise, somebody else thought to put them on a cruise already, right? But they didn't think to do it the way that I am going to do it. So
That's
I wouldn't get too hung up on people thinking you're derivative if you're glancing off of areas that other people have done already.
That's helpful because I've always felt kind of a little guilty that I have similar things to other books. So to hear that from you definitely helps boost my confidence. So, like Taylor said, you've written a lot of series that are all been wildly successful. So this might be a hard question, but what is your favorite series that you've written and why?
Yeah, that is a hard question. In fact, it's so hard I can't answer it. It's totally legit question, but it is, because it's just I put so much time and effort into them, and so it's like saying which of my children is my favorite child. And for the record, I do not have a favorite child. I so I, I I will say the one that's the most fun to research has been the FunJungle series, because I just always loved zoos, and it allows me to go behind the scenes at zoos, or talk to all these specialists who study animals, or talk to people at the World Wildlife Fund who are doing everything they can to fight crimes against wildlife. So that is I just get to talk to amazing people and go amazing places to research that.
That's awesome. So this is kind of we kind of touched on this, but do you have any advice for young writers who may be struggling to write a book?
Well, okay, first of all, since we're talking about research, I think that a lot of the time kids think, well, I can't do research because I'm a kid. And that's actually not, or not even, I mean, you can do research, but they think like, oh, I can't go, somebody won't talk to me because I'm a kid. I can't reach out to them. And as you guys may have found, people are very willing to talk to you. They might be more willing to talk to you because you're kids. And I occasionally have brought my kids along to do research, and I'll find that the people I'm talking to are generally, well, if I just show up, they'll talk to me for like an hour. If I bring my kids, they will talk to me all day. So so it's people are very, I mean, I find that people are generally very eager to talk about what they do, and to share what they've learned with you. And so as a kid, that's not really something that should get in your way in terms of that. In terms of writing, you also talked about this idea of, is it wrong to take things from other writers? And there, I think that in terms of finding a writing style, it's completely okay to try and mimic writers that you like. And so I really did try to mimic the writing style of the humor of Douglas Adams, or the ability to work science into my books the way that Michael Crichton did. And it's not really stealing, because you're not going to end up writing the exact same way as that person. Everybody's going to have their own style. But to say, oh, here's what I like about a book and what works in this book, and oh, I'm going to try and do that, is totally fine. And so, yeah, I think it's almost impossible to become an author without being a big reader, because you know what books appeal to you and what you like about them. And so that's part of it. The last piece of advice, and this is the sort of the bummer of it all, is to say that especially when you're starting young, like being an author is an unusual job, and then you can try it out when you're very young, and you can try writing. And so that means that there's a lot of people trying to be an author long before they would ever attempt to do any other type of job. There's no kids going like, oh, I want to be a doctor, so I'm going to start doing surgery when I'm in middle school and see how I like that. So kids are trying it in middle school, but you know what? It takes a while to sort of hone your craft. And occasionally, very, very rare occasions, somebody publishes a book when they're in middle school or high school. Like Gordon Corman would be an example. He published in middle school. We all hate Gordon for that. No, he's a lovely person, but it's rare. And for the most part, I tried writing books in middle school. I got plenty of rejections. Most authors I know got rejected. Just about every famous author you can think of got rejected, maybe hundreds of times. And it stinks. It stinks to get rejected. But you have to realize that if every one of those people had quit after they got rejected, then you'd have almost no books in your library or in your home. You only have Gordon Corman books. So you have to just, like, a rejection doesn't mean that you're a bad writer. It means that maybe you need some more work, or what you're writing just isn't the right thing. And if you really love it, stick with it and keep working at it.
So it's kind of persevere and don't underestimate what you can do and read a lot because that'll help encourage your writing.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Randomly, Maddie and I have a friend who did publish a book when we were in middle school, like 5th grade.
Really?
So yeah, I didn't even realize it until Maddie told me a few weeks ago that she actually has published multiple books. So I couldn't believe it, but yeah, we randomly have a friend who has
Well,
published
no,
books.
they're out there,
So,
and
yeah.
you know, it happens, and yeah, right. There's an exception to everything, right? Certainly, but yeah, it you know it. So she doesn't have to follow that piece of my advice, but
Yes, sir. So these are the last two questions that we ask all of our guests.
okay.
And like we said, is what books have had an impact on you and why?
Okay, well, I was certainly talking about others I liked, and the first one I mentioned was Ellen Raskin. I'm going to hold up here The Westing Game, which is just an incredibly influential book in my life. And part of the reason is I can actually remember reading this book when I was in 4th grade, and I remember several of the like aha moments that it's such a brilliantly crafted mystery, and there's actually multiple things going on, and there are these moments where you just go, oh man, why did I figure that out? And I try to make those moments happen in my own books. And to that end, you know, I reread The Westing Game relatively regularly, every couple of years, because I can still learn from reading this book. So it's a great. I may have learned more by reading The Westing Game than by any sort of class I could take in writing.
Yes, I actually recently did read The Weston Game and I loved it. And now that I've actually also read some of your series called Spy School, and I can actually see a lot of similarities in those aha moments between those two books, and they're both of them are incredible.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. Yeah, well, if right, it goes back to what you're sort of saying about, can you take something? I've never necessarily taken anything directly from the Westing Game, but I've looked at how she built the story, and you know, there's a lot of wordplay and sort of codes and things like that, and those are all things that have just fascinated me. And so when I write, I look to what worked for me as a kid and or as an adult, and in stuff I was reading, and try and use that now.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I haven't read The Westing Game yet, but now that both of you guys have read it and recommended it, I guess I'll have to check it out.
You will.
So it's really funny. I have actually a copy of your first book on Spy School, and it's well worn. If I don't know if you can tell on Zoom, but it's because all of my siblings have read it and they've really enjoyed it. In fact, my littlest sister has her bookmark in it now. So yeah, they've all really enjoyed it, including myself. So it's a wonderful book.
Thank you so much. That's very, very nice to hear.
So our last question that we always ask everyone is, what advice do you have for teenagers, like in general life advice?
You know, sometimes I find the best thing I can tell teenagers is that life keeps on getting better. Sometimes when you're a teenager, especially now, like, oh, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and it's hard to be a teenager, and it's got to be worse now than you know it was when I was a kid. But I don't know. Every once in a while, I mean, I remember people telling us in high school, like, these are the best years of your life. And you were like, what? And like, oh no, right. Like, even if they are the best years, you're like, don't tell somebody. I mean, if someone's having, I'm sorry, they're not, but if somebody's having like the best time ever, don't say, hey, it's all downhill from here. Like I mean, it's, you know, I'm sure your parents are doing everything they can to make your life as nice as possible. But you know, growing up, don't be in a rush to do it, but you know, being you get more opportunity, you get to find what you love, and you know, make your friends and try and see the world and all. So there's the things get better. So if you're sitting at home going like, oh man, being a teenager sucks, and somebody told me that this is the best years of my life, don't believe them about that. They're not. It doesn't mean you can't have a great time as a teenager. It doesn't mean you can't have great friends. That's great. But I'm also going to go back to this idea about finding what you're passionate about, and that you know, you don't have to know what you want to do for a living right now. I was lucky. I always wanted to write, but my sister would always get on me and say, like, not everybody knows that. There's so many fascinating things to do in the world, and as you guys, if any opportunity you can get. To be curious, to learn something, to find out about the world, I would say seize that opportunity. Your life is going to be much more interesting if you say yes to opportunity than if you say no to opportunity.
Well, thank goodness that the cliques in middle school and then for next year for us, high school are not the best times of our lives. That's good news for everyone.
Yeah, it's tough. It
Well,
is tough, right?
yeah.
So figuring all that social stuff is not the easiest thing in the whole world, and you get better at it, right? So.
Well, thank goodness. Well, again, thank you so much, Mr. Gibbs, for coming on. It's been wonderful having you on.
You two are fantastic interviewers. You're obviously very bright and enthusiastic, and talking to girls like you makes me feel very enthusiastic about the future of this country.